Riversdale Historical Society. Thank you, Howard.
Sorry, Patrick.
That's all right. Just a few Zoom rules, if you will. Just keep yourself muted if you can, and for background noise and what have you. If you have a question, just raise your hand electronically there, or use the chat function, if you will. And we will post, we're recording the session, and we will post it on the RHS website and also the YouTube website of RHS in about 7 to 10 days. And later on in the meeting, towards the end, some guests are coming in, Mayor Alan Thompson and Councilman Aaron Foe of Riverdale Park, to talk to us a little bit about, give us some updates on the naming of a public park in Riverdale Park, of what's going on there. So with that, we will get started off with the approval of the minutes. If anybody has, they were attached with the agenda that went out. If we have anybody that would like to have any edits or comments or move to approve as presented.
I'll move approval, please.
Okay,
That's
second.
Second.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ann, again for a wonderful job of keeping us up to date there. Now we'll move to Michelle for the treasurer's report.
Okay. The checking account has $17,105.63 in it. Our expenditures since the last meeting have been the general expenditures that we always see: our internet access for Jennifer, salaries for Jennifer and Brenna Spray, and also Christy Gross, who's filling in for Brenna while she's on maternity leave. I don't really have anything too much new to report. We've gotten some memberships in, and overall we're in good financial shape.
Great. Any questions for Michelle? If not, if I could hear a motion to approve the treasurer's report as presented.
So moved.
Okay, we have a second, I think, from Joanne there. So thank you very much. Thank you, Michelle. And now Maya Davis, the director, is not able to be with us today. She is presenting a report elsewhere. I'm not sure exactly where, Howard, you remember, but she sent us some notes and Howard's going to share those with us.
Yeah, Maya is giving a presentation at a conference, I want to say in Charlestown, but I'm not sure. But at any rate, she asked us to report out, first of all, that COVID policies at the museum have once again changed. Masks are now optional, both for guests and for staff, as I understand it. They're not doing temperature checks anymore, and they're not asking for proof of vaccination, but they are encouraging people to still remain socially distant. And I think they are still going to limit group sizes moving forward until the next modification. Staff on site are there Monday through Friday, and then they rotate shifts on Sundays. And Jen, I think you might be able to give us a little more information, but at this point, the staffing is really at a very low level. Maya and Sam are both on full time for park and planning. Jen is still working her regular schedule, splitting her time between park and planning and RHS. Laura, the gardener, is still keeping her hours. But after that, it gets pretty quiet. Gina Lewis is giving Riversdale a few hours of her staff time. Brenna's out on maternity leave. Christy Gross was filling in for Brenna to do a lot of the social media and all of that, but she's had COVID for the last 2 weeks. So she's working from home as she can, but it's somewhat limited hours. I know that the education coordinator position is open and they're interviewing. They're looking to fill it very quickly to do both program planning and educational offerings. So hopefully that will get filled. I think Maya said there are still some candidates coming in this week. So that's going pretty well. The Descendant Network Committee has met. They met on March 18th. That's still moving forward to try and reach out to not only Calvert descendants, but descendants of the workforce, try and make those connections. Apparently, it's been going pretty well at like Georgetown University and Sotterley and some other places. So we're going to try and use some of the tried and true methods that they have in terms of putting a letter out, trying to find more and more and more descendants of everyone who is at Riversdale. Past programs, the Plumber's Kitchen program was very successful. There were almost 90 people who showed up for that event. The Kitchen Guild Open House, Michelle, you want to talk just a minute about that one? Also
Sure.
a success.
Yes, it was a success. We had 26 people come out for that event. It was the first time the Kitchen Guild has cooked since last fall, and overall we had a good menu and people were quite intrigued. One of the goals was to try to drum up some interest in participating in the Kitchen Guild. We had a few people who pre-registered, indicated that they might be interested in volunteering. So we have names and email addresses, and we're going to reach out to those folks with information on our other events and whatever else we think about doing going forward.
Great, great. Yeah, I'm glad that we got such a good turnout. I know it was not the most beautiful weather that day, but the fact that people came and stuck around and some of them made their way through the house was really good. In terms of upcoming programs, Anne, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing on the 31st, and then I'll catch everybody else up on others.
What I'm doing on the 31st?
Yeah, I'm giving a lecture on the
Oh,
30th.
I'm sorry, Anne Moss, not Anne. Sorry, Anne.
Illustrated, yeah, Anne with no E. Illustrated presentation. This is actually combining two talks that I have done using Martha Ogle-Foreman's diary, who was at Rose Hill in Cecil County, Maryland. She kept her diary from 1814 to 1845, so at least the first year she was a contemporary of Rosalie Calvert's. And she gave very detailed notes about both her enslaved women and the contributions they were making to all of the household chores, but also information on the clothing of all of the enslaved people there. So I'm combining two talks. The one I gave for Deerfield was really focusing on the labor. It was called, what was it called? Invisible Workers, I think was the name of their. So I focused on a few of the house women, the enslaved women. But then for Costume Society of America, I just really gave an overview of what all the enslaved people were wearing, because we don't have a whole lot of information that gives details of what enslaved people wore. And also, since this is such a long period of time, and it's in the Upper South, we see both the differences between the Upper South and what might have been going on in the Lower South, and also change over time. So you'll see some of that also. And I understand from Sam, and yes, Samantha is still involved, Kathy, very much involved. She's got a lot on her plate. But I understand from her that there are about 60 people registered for the lecture. I'm sorry I couldn't do it in person, because one of the things I did was make some replica garments that I would like to be able to show people in person, but you'll just have to do photographs of them for now. So if you haven't registered, please sign up and register. Oh, and I should say that RHS has graciously allowed us to use your Zoom platform, so we don't have to go through the challenges of using Microsoft Teams, which is the program that Park and Planning uses. So thank you for allowing us.
Of course. Yeah, no, I think that's going to be great. I think everybody's looking forward to it. And the fact that we have 60 registrants really shows that we continue to keep a lot of interest in Riversdale, as well as in your particular field. Following that, there is a chamber concert scheduled for the 24th of April, which was originally scheduled for an earlier date, rescheduled as we all have gotten used to. Lots of things happening that way. We'll be doing our annual free Mother's Day tours on the 8th of May. There is a chamber concert planned for the 15th of May. We've begun to book in the Jazz on the Lawn concerts that will go through the summer. Hands-on History Weeks are still happening in July. so there's plenty of things going on, and it feels like we're restarting yet again in terms of both in-person and online programming. So like everybody else in the world, we're just going to keep moving forward and seeing how we can produce these programs. I think the fact that we had so many people turn out for the open house, the Kitchen Guild open house, as well as the Plumber's Kitchen, says that people are getting more comfortable with coming to events. And again, those were in the dependency. Those are fairly confined spaces, but they are also spaces where you can get a good breeze and good airflow. So I think that makes a difference in people's comfort level. There will be a volunteer open house on April 30th from 2 to 4 p.m. Brenna's coordinating that, and she will be back. So I don't have a lot of detail on that, but stay tuned. And then let me double check. Yeah, the presentation that Maya is doing now, she's in Harrisonburg at the Mid-Atlantic Regional Archives Conference. And she's speaking about collections that have added to our interpretation at Riversdale and how we're expanding our interpretation of Riversdale to include the Calverts, the Plumbers, and other workers in the workforce at Riversdale. So that is her program this week. The staff is working on, and Jen, you may have more information on this than I do, on a new sort of guidebook for the interpretive plan, sort of an outline as we continue to add elements. The research that Jen has done and others have done into the workforce using the Calvert papers as the primary reference source keeps expanding our view and keeps expanding our knowledge. So with that, our interpretation keeps expanding. And that will also include the workforce exhibition that I know, Lee Ryan, you've been working on. So I don't know if you know the current schedule, but if you do, can you enlighten us on when we think that will actually go up?
I don't think we really have a date yet. I mean, we've talked about fall, but I mean, it's coming along beautifully, and we're meeting monthly with the focus group on it, and it's all been very productive.
Great, great. Well, again, it's all part of expanding the story of Riversdale, and we all have learned that as docents, we don't have time to cover everything, but the more our knowledge expands, the more we really can move into various interests in various fields. So it's all great. I will also mention, thank you, Ann Bloss, for the reminder. Renee Kidd's family is doing a memorial service for her at Riversdale on April the 2nd. And I am not sure of the time. Patrick, do you have that?
I believe it's 10 o'clock. Let me double check.
I think it's 2.
Oh, 2.
Is it 2?
I think.
All right, we'll get a notice out to everyone. But of course, we all.
Yeah, it is
Yes.
2 p.m.
2 o'clock.
p.m.
Okay. Nothing. Were you gonna add something?
Howard,
Yes.
I got an email from Sam saying the memorial service was from 1 to 1:45. And
Okay.
the reception would be from 2 to 4, overflowing into the garden area. That's all I know, because I was going to attend the memorial as well as being the docent, the room docent, one of the
Great.
room docents.
Thanks. Thank you for that, because I wasn't sure about the timing. So that's great, Dudley. Thank you.
All right.
And we all remember, or most of us, I think, remember Renee and the many years she gave to Riversdale. Her family wanted to do some sort of memorial for her, I guess almost 2 years ago now. But like so many things, it got moved into this year. So April 2nd, next weekend, that will be happening. And the only other updates I got from Maya was just a reminder that the Planning Commission Chair, Betty Hewlett, or the Planning Board Chair, is retiring. The county executive has proposed a replacement as the new head of the planning board. So we should see that ratified and put in place in the next few weeks. And then Patrick, you may want to just mention the Natural and Historic Resources Division of Park and Planning is doing a series of what they call impact planning workshops.
Yeah,
And
I'll
I think
talk
you're
about that.
attending one this coming week, Patrick.
Yeah, I will talk about that a little later. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So that is all of Maya's report, covers a lot of ground. Again, we all feel like we're once again starting back up, but things are beginning to get very busy. So that is that range.
Great. Thank you very much for sharing Maya's thoughts with us. Any questions or comments with regards to that?
And I add one more thing. We also did our first book discussion group on March, I think it was the 5th. It wasn't a huge group, but it was all people knew, except for me, to Riversdale. And what was nice is that, first of all, it was sort of a younger group, and one or two of them actually talked about considering being docents. So I thought in that respect, in terms of an activity, it was very good. So we will probably have another one. I don't know when Maya's thinking about doing that, but the first one really did go well.
Great. I know that Brenna and Maya have been talking about that as outreach for docent recruitment because we do need additional docents, additional volunteers, not only for docent positions, but the museum shop also. So I'm glad to hear it was a success and there was some additional interest in it there. So thank you very much. We'll go to the Calvert Memorial Park update. Anne, if you could share some thoughts about what's going on about the park, even though it's winter time.
Which Anne?
Yep, just a moment. Let me pull up Beth's report that she sent me. Come on, you. Sorry about this. I am having some technical difficulties here. Come back to me in a minute, Patrick. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. I will maybe give a little update on that. I don't know if it's included in your report or not, but one of the projects that the Society has entered into, along with the Paint Branch Garden Club, is the improvement and restoration of the brick wall there that borders the parking lot at the base of the park along Riverdale Park Town Center. So we have been in, signed a contract with a local company that is going to power wash the wall, and then also the return is tuck point the bricks. So replace the some of the cement, the mortar between the bricks that have fallen away over the years, clean up the stairway, and just make it kind of a nicer looking site, a little fresher for the spring coming along. And that work should start probably in the next 2 weeks. It's really weather dependent. We signed the contract back in January, but they didn't want to do any of the work in the colder months because of the aspect of getting the bricks wet and then absorbing that water and freezing. So it would probably just cause more damage than we currently are showing. And I don't know if any of you have been up there in the most recent 2 or 3 weeks, but as part of the project, the restoration company gave us samplings of the mortars that they could use to tuck point. So there were 5 samples put up, and through myself and Howard and Ann and the Paint Branch Garden Club made a selection of the mortars that we felt best suited the replacement. It's not going to be a perfect match because the wall's been there almost 60, 70 years. So the fading of the mortar and what have you is kind of hard to match, but probably within the next 6 to 9 months after the work's completed, it will all look similar again. So again, that works weather dependent in the next 2 to 3 weeks to start. So Anne, are
Right.
you?
Yeah, I finally got my document here.
Okay, great. Thank you.
This comes from Beth Alvarez, who has been leading the volunteer effort at the park very faithfully every week, pretty much they're out there. So there's a lot getting done. The total number of volunteer hours as of March the 22nd is 1,485.5. So almost 1,500 volunteer hours have been put in. Since the last report in the park, tasks performed have included pruning the roses on the north side of the fenced gravesite, picking up trash, raking leaves, trimming the liriope, starting on what is always a perennial task, weeding, cutting down 2 of the struggling Burford hollies on the southern perimeter, cutting off a damaged trunk of a witch hazel, patching the plastic sheeting that had been torn up by the trucks on the western perimeter, digging up and potting native blue cardinal flower from a portion of the church outline for later transplantation in the park, digging up, thinning, and replanting black-eyed Susans on the western perimeter of the fenced grave site. On March the 1st, volunteers were shocked to discover that a WSSC contractor that was replacing a sewer main in the eastbound lane of East-West Highway north of the park had placed large metal items in a portion of the park. Metal items were removed the next day, and areas damaged by that crew and on December 29 have been mitigated. On March 8, 6 park volunteers met with Joe Meny, the curator of conifers at the National Arboretum. Joe walked the park with us to view the areas where we expect to have plants installed for screening of the unsightly neighboring properties. Joe has sent an extensive list of suggestions. We will use his suggestions to make a plan that can be sent to potential vendors for installation once a fence is installed. On March 15th, Kyle Hofflinger, a member of Alpha Phi Omega, a service fraternity at the University of Maryland, stopped by and offered the help of his fraternity members with tasks at the park. And Beth expects to call upon him for tasks requiring the assistance of young, strong volunteers. And that's all I have.
Great. Thank you very much.
Patrick,
Again, just
Patrick, I'd be happy to add a couple of elements there.
great.
As we reported at the last meeting, the Boy Scout project to do the brick outline of the Riverdale Presbyterian Church is completed. Really looks great, along with the benches that they installed. As you may recall, this was an Eagle Scout project that was undertaken by the son of one of the Paint Branch Garden Club volunteers. He recruited other scouts and even a few adults to help them out, and it really looks terrific. We are working with a signage company to put in some sort of signage in the park to talk about the church itself, its history, its significance to the town of Riverdale Park and the area. And so we're working on that. There was a centennial history of the church issued several years ago, which has good historical information and even some good historical photos that we will include in that signage. And then we're also looking into, excuse me, although we haven't quite determined whether it makes sense financially. One of the plans when the neighborhood design group gave us their volunteer input into possible designs for the park was a large sort of symbolic Gothic archway, which would be evocative of the entry to the church. And it did have several big Gothic windows and a Gothic doorway. So we may just do sort of an outline in stainless steel or something like that to show, again, where the entry would have been, but also to add some vertical interest into the park. So you could see it as you come up the stairs or as you look up the stairs from the Riverdale Town Center. So those two projects are also being examined and will probably come along later this year, depending on, again, affordability and availability of materials and all those good things. So thank you, Patrick.
Great.
I
Thank you very much.
think we had talked about doing a general sign for the park as well.
Right, you're right. There is the sign that simply says Calvert Memorial Park, but we want to give some more information closer to the entrance of the park from the town center. So yes, you're absolutely right. We will do a more general piece of information that will contain reference, obviously, to the Calvert family and Riversdale and the cemetery. So yeah, thanks for the reminder.
And one of the parts of that signage with regards to the, not only the church, but also the history of the graveyard itself and Riversdale, the signage will include a QR code so that you could enter through the QR code and it will take you directly back to the RHS website, which has a lot of detailed information, much more than you could put on a sign that people will take time to read. So the signage project is coming along. I'm also happy to report that I was out there yesterday, or actually Thursday, I'm sorry, where the Riverdale Park Farmers Market takes place down there in the parking lot at Town Center. And for even a March day, there were quite a few vendors out there, and people were taking advantage. They have a lot of prepared foods at the market, taking advantage of going up and sitting on the benches around the outline of the church and in the park and enjoying their kind of takeaway foods and what have you. So I know in the past summer, there has been a lot of use of that and just people sitting around on the grass having picnics. So with the addition of the benches up there this year in the summer season, I think we'll probably see more people up there to understand what's really going on and really have a enjoyable time in the park, but also kind of get some more information about Riverdale itself, the mansion and the Calvert family that are laid to rest there. But it's an exciting project, and I'm very, very pleased that Paint Bench Garden Club, and please take these words back to Beth with us, that the number of volunteer hours and the commitment that has taken place over there over the past few years is just amazing. The change in the appearance of the park, and really feel confident in calling it a park now, as opposed to kind of 5 or 6 years ago of what it had become, just because of availability of manpower and funds to take care of the park. So I look forward to a lot of changes coming in this spring with planting and colorful flowers coming up through that area. I think that it also is aspect of realization of giving some more exposure to the mansion through the park to the residents of Riverdale through the farmers market that they're every Thursday. So great project again, and very pleased that we're able to keep moving forward in the park. Howard, if you would like to, any updates on the newsletter at this point?
Well, the newsletter has fallen prey to the staffing shortages and the overload on Sam and Maya. And so we are getting their articles in place. We have several other articles, one from Jen, one on some of the history of the Ark and Dove, and the new, I guess it's the new Ark, the recreation of the Ark that is being launched. So we're going to tie together, obviously, all of that history as it relates to the Calvert family. So that new newsletter should be out probably in about the next 3 weeks or so. Joanne?
It's the new Dove.
The new Dove, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I do that every time, Joanne.
It's easy to do since the Ark comes first. Dove
Since
is
we
a
all keep talking
smaller-
about the Ark and Dove, right? Yeah.
Right. Dove is a smaller ship, and it's at the Chesapeake Bay Maritime Museum where it is being constructed.
Right. And have you been out to see it, Joanne?
The society was there in September to see and given a talk about how the construction was going, and it was closer in shape and size and interior and all of that to the actual ships of the 17th century than the original Dove, which is over 30 years old, which is why it's being replaced. So hopefully it's finished this spring.
Yeah, it looks like a great project. It really, I think it's a great thing that they just keep working on it. And there's some amazing videos now of the actual process of construction. And I mean, when you see something like that being hand built again, as it was in its original day, it's pretty startling, pretty amazing. So,
Yeah, I wonder if they've calculated the hours
Yes, they
involved.
have.
I'm sure they have, but I haven't seen any report on that.
yeah, I haven't either, but it would be fascinating to see how many hours and how it just takes, again, it's painstaking physical and artistic labor. I mean, it's incredible. It's just beautiful. So, yeah, great.
Perhaps we can sponsor a field trip down to when the dove arrives at St. Mary's to welcome it to the shores of the eastern shores of Maryland, I guess, or yes, western shores rather. I get that mixed up occasionally. So, all righty, thank you very much.
Just one more thing on the new dove. The plan is, once it's completed, is for it to take the remains that go to the chapel and return it on a maiden voyage to St. Mary's, and I'm sure that will be advertised. This is Henry Miller and Regina Fadden have constantly been talking about that. So if you want any updates, we can get you an official on. And Howard, if you want to know some of the details of the construction for an article, either we can do it for you, or you can get a hold of the shipwright, and we can send you his email information. Who lives in Centerville,
Which is where I grew up.
Actually, Davis, if you would,
We had
if you would,
Hogwarts.
yeah, if you would put me in touch with him, that would be great, because I'd love to include some, quotes and his accounts. And as Joanne said, maybe he can even tell us, how much effort went into launching the new old dove. But that would be great. Thank you.
do you happen to have a Osage or orange tree growing on your property anywhere,
Osage Orange.
or a black locust?
No, we did have temporary years back, the Osage orange trees that Park and Planning brought in very large pots that they put out in front of the main doors of the mansion. And they lasted, through the summer, but they were taken back to the greenhouse probably in early October or what have you. But because of COVID, the greenhouse aspects of Park and Planning have been greatly diminished. So perhaps they could come back.
Well, I was
in a year or so.
thinking of mature trees that often get started by birds and squirrels and so on from eating the fruit. But the reason I bring it up is the blocks, block and tackle, are being made from Osage orange for the new dove, and all the pins because they're pinning all the planks and timbers and so on, are being made from black locust, and they're running out of supply. And I've given them a couple of ideas for additional supply of the pieces of the tree that they will then split, shape, and so on into those. And they've made hundreds of blocks already out of the Osage orange.
Well, unfortunately, we have no resources for more wood there.
Well, I was thinking if you did, it would be symbolic. So that's why I was.
Now, the Kitchen Guild is always in search of wood for the fireplace. It's actually, so I don't think if we had it, we'd be happy to share it, but I don't think we do.
Well, I'm going to bring you some Osage orange logs then, because Osage orange has got the highest BTU and lowest ash of any tree in our area.
Wow, interesting. Very
But
interesting.
it doesn't do well when it's open cooking, because it tends to add a flavor.
No, that's the locust.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's the locust that does that.
Can't burn locust, okay.
Quick question. We've got tons of bound bits of wood and such. I mean, big blocks, because our landlord's been cutting trees and such. If I wanted to bring some stuff for the Kitchen Guild, where should I put it?
Michelle, I'll turn to you if we can move into Kitchen Guild, but
We can, well, when we get there, just answer it then, thanks.
sure. Well, actually, that's the next thing on the agenda is Kitchen Guild. So I'll turn it over to Michelle. She can put on her other hat from treasurer.
Well, Janet, if you wouldn't, if you have a particular date that you'd like to drop it off, if you could let me know, I'll put my email in the chat. And what I'm thinking, I don't know how much you're talking about. We could either put it, we have some wood boxes outside of the dependency, and we might even be able to put some inside. So it's just about a matter of just coordinating to make sure
Yeah,
if
okay,
there's a particular day you're coming, that if it's a weekend and I can come by, or if it's during the week, I can let the park and planning or the office staff know you'll be coming by.
it might just be, I'll have to take a look because some of it might have to be chopped in smaller pieces. It's accumulated over the couple of years because of COVID and such. Landlord hasn't been able to arrange to have someone come over with a big truck and haul it all away. If we can get rid of some of it in the meantime, and put it to use. So yeah, just the chat, I'll write down I'll get your email address, and then I'll talk with my husband and see about, when we can just bring, because I live like a mile from Riversdale, so I can drop it off anytime.
Right. And if some of it is going to need to be chopped, I'll see if I can coordinate with Kitty Marks. I think she may know her one of her friends may have a chainsaw if we're going to have to chop it up a little bit.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
So I'll just lead into the Kitchen Guild. I already talked about the open house, which was quite successful. And what was really nice about that event was there were a number of families who came out. So we had a variety of ages in our audience, which was quite nice. We also had a University of Maryland student. He's in his senior year, majoring in journalism. He was writing an online article for the College Park, their community newspaper or e-newspaper. I'm blanking on the name of it, but he was quite interested and followed up with me with some additional questions for his article. So I haven't seen it on their website yet, but we'll pass that along when it does. The volunteer open house, the Kitchen Guild will be there. It's on April 30th, which is a Saturday. And my understanding is that Laura Sweeney, the gardener, will be there. And the house will also be open for docent volunteer recruitment. So it should be an interesting day. The Kitchen Guild is looking at some recipes that we can do that will allow us to do some demonstrations, but also answer some questions that people may have. We're also going to be cooking on Mother's Day and Father's Day, May 8th and June 19th. And we'll be working on a schedule for the rest of the year, July probably through November. And Kitty Marks and I just recently finished updating the Riversdale Housewife, which is our recipe book guide for cooking. We added some recipes that that were not originally in the document, but we've had good success with, and we had those reprinted. So our more recent volunteers have an updated copy, and we can also use that if we have someone interested in volunteering. If you know anybody, please have them reach out to the office, and we would be glad to talk with them and bring in some new people.
Thank you very much,
That's all I
Michelle.
have.
Any follow-up questions for Michelle or the Kitchen Guild? They do an incredible job out there, and it's always nice to see people interact with them. And when I was there, I guess 3 weeks ago now, my first docent duty in almost a little less than 2 years, I guess, because of COVID. It's interesting to get kind of back in the flow of things and see the changes that have gone on in the house, but also hear the comments that people have come in from the Kitchen Guild to see the demonstrations and what's going on, and the discussions that ensue from how food was really prepared and served during that period that Rosalie and George were living in the house there. So again, great thank you to Michelle and all her hard work, and Kitty is what they do with the Kitchen Guild. I know Michelle has many hats that she wears at Riversdale, and we certainly appreciate all the work and energy she puts into it. So any other questions or comments about the Kitchen Guild? All righty, then Jen, if you will appear or just your voice appear, see what goes on here. Thanks.
Fortunately, I still can't appear, but I am going to, let's try sharing my screen. Can you see that? Please say yes.
That's
Yes.
great. Thanks, Jen.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so just a quick update on the mirror conservation. These are the mirrors for those who are new or don't remember. They are being conserved with funds from the Mary Calvert Conger Fund and the Jean Roberts. So we're slowly but surely moving forward. If you look at the mirror on the left, you can see the reverse paint Iglo-Mise panel that is now being shown on the left here. And if you look carefully, you can see there's a lot of paint loss along the bottom. That has been conserved, which you can see on the right now. The panel has been restored, in-painted, and then it has been reproduced for the matching mirror, which had a replaced panel that was not original to the mirror. So after this original panel was restored, it was replicated to mirror the original. So when the mirrors are hung, they will be facing each other. So the reproduced panel is shown here on the left. The lower panels are still being worked on. They're the ones being in-painted and restored now, as well as the main mirror panels. Those had been re-silvered. The one original had been re-silvered, and then there was a replacement one for that. They were unhappy with how one of the panels was, how the silvering came out. So that one is being redone. So we are slowly but surely moving forward. And then otherwise, we haven't had any real big collection updates that I can share with you. So I figured I would share a document that we have made a little bit of, not progress, but a new document we came across in the Calvert papers that kind of piqued our interest and started looking a little more into. So you can see this is an image of a daybook, one of Charles Benedict's daybooks from 1849. And it has listings of different purchases, salt, mustard seed, cloves, allspice, mace, things like that, oil. And then you can see where I circled Elias Plummer, that he was paid 25 cents on July 7th of 1849. So this is the only entry in the papers that we've seen so far. Again, obviously we haven't seen everything, but that lists Elias Plummer. We've seen Adam Plummer listed a few times, but this is it for Elias. So that piqued my interest at least, and started looking into that a little bit more. So background for those of you who don't know, Elias was one of 8 children of Barney and Sarah. He was Adam Francis Plummer's older brother. He was born in 1817. So again, Barney Plummer married Sarah Norris around 1800, and Sarah Norris was a daughter of Eleanor Beckett, who
And William.
was the enslaved woman who also had children with George Calvert. So there is that relation. So again, just to give you a background on Elias Plummer. And then Elias Plummer married Rebecca Gilbert, another enslaved woman. So we started looking more for what happened to Elias. And we came across this Freedmen's Bank record that lists Elias at the top. It's from 1867, and he made a $25 deposit at that time. But this document gives us more information into him. We can see name of master and name of mistress. It has C.H. Carter and then Eugenia. So he was enslaved by Charles Henry Carter and Rosalie Eugenia Calvert Carter. So George and Rosalie's daughter, Eugenia. Elias was 5 feet 6 inches tall. He was employed as a messenger. He's married to Rebecca, and he had 2 sons, William and Wesley. So it was John Wesley, actually. So that's gives us a little bit more information that then we can look a little deeper. So that, again, that's 1867. So the fact that we saw C.H. Carter and Eugenia, we can go back to the Goodwood deed, which Goodwood, for those of you who don't remember, that was originally named Mount Albion, which was George Calvert's other plantation prior to his marriage to Rosalie. He lived at Mount Albion, which is where Eleanor Beckett resided. So he had about 60, 70 slaves there at the time of his marriage to Rosalie. So at the time of Eugenia's marriage to Charles Henry Carter, Goodwood was deeded over to Eugenia, along with 42 enslaved individuals. So this is a copy of the deed of the enslaved that were transferred over. And there, as you can see, I underlined, there's Elias. So another confirmation that, okay, yes, everything's kind of checking off. Then I found a letter at the archives in 1868 where Elias Plummer is writing to request rental of 10 acres of land on the Arlington estate west of the canal, being the land rent of the past year by Mr. Simfax. This land includes a brick stable, which I agreed to take care of and to turn over in the same condition, ordinary where accepted, as it is in now. So again, we have what I showed you before, the 1867 Freedmen's Bank record, which showed Elias Plummer after emancipation. He went and he lived in the Freedmen's Village in Arlington. That's where he and his family lived. Then here we see that he has requested 10 acres of land to farm on the Arlington estate. So he's farming there. So another kind of just bit of information that is fascinating to me. 1870, here's another Freedmen's Bank record that is for his son, William Plummer, who was a soldier at the time. He was still single, but you say father Elias, mother Rebecca, brother was Wesley. And then at the bottom, it says this deposit was made by his father, Elias Plummer. So Elias is still around. He's involved, obviously his children are still there. He's making deposits for them. The next record we have is from an article in the Alexandria Gazette, 1874. Daniel Richardson, a colored man, formerly a slave of General Lee, was arrested on suspicion of burning Elias Plummer's barn Friday. After a hearing before Justice Austin, he was sent to the Alexandria jail. So next record we have is, unfortunately, his death record, where I've circled Elias Plummer. He passed away January 22nd near Brick Barn. So if we think back to that letter where he was renting 10 acres of land, we know there was a brick barn there. Does that mean that's the brick barn that he died near? We don't know, obviously, but things are kind of ticking together. So Elias passed away. He was 59 years old. And then I followed up census records, a couple, the next two census records, and the 1880 record, we know that his two sons were living next to each other. They had both married, had children. There was no indication of his wife, Rebecca, but then the 1900 census, I found Rebecca, who was 85 years old at the time, who was then living with her son, John Wesley, and his wife, Eugenie, and I believe 8 of their children at this time. They ended up having 13 children. So Rebecca was with her son, and then she passed away in 1904. So that's just an interesting kind of delve into how we find one document and it just kind of starts you down a rabbit hole of trying to find out more and helping to kind of piece together stories of individuals. And even though Elias Plummer was enslaved at Goodwood, you can still see how he did something for Charles Benedict, where Charles Benedict paid him 25 cents, and just the whole story I find fascinating. So that's all I had to share. There were no collection additions this past month. It was a slow month in those terms. This is also, we've had on loan to us the sesquicentennial, it's hard to say, quilt. The Emancipation quilt has been on view for the past few months. That is being returned to the lender at the end of this month. So this weekend is the last weekend it will be displayed. So if anybody does want to come and see it, this weekend's your last chance. So yeah, that's my report.
Jen, I see we do have a question from Lynn. Thank you very much.
Okay.
It's quite interesting.
Yes, Jen, I think that's amazing. You've pulled a huge amount together that's really, to go over that time span, I think is really, since it's so hard to find information. But when the reference to the Arlington estate, does that mean Arlington House, Robert E. Lee's property, which by that time is not his anymore?
Right. Well, the Freedman's Village where he was living is literally in Arlington next to the estate. So that was all being used. So again, that's why I think it was referenced as Arlington House, because it's all right there.
Right. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, Lynn, I agree. I think this kind of research really shows the incredible depth and I mean the amazing work that Jen does, just tracking one to the next to the next to the next to the next, and it enriches our understanding so much. And Jen, you know how we all feel about you and how grateful we are for all your work, but that's a great example of exactly why you start with one thing and you end up with so much information that adds to it. So thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
I found it very interesting that he was illiterate and had employed a scribe. And down at the bottom, you could see the signature, Elias Plummer, his mark, and a little X. And I wonder how many who are all these scribes and with beautiful handwriting, and could they actually be trusted to take down exactly what you asked them to do? And how much did you pay them? And at what point do any of these people learn to read and write in later days? Or at what point is there a generation that receives schooling and they don't need to employ scribes? That was one of the things I was thinking about.
Yeah.
Could I add one thing? And this is something I've been thinking about for 3 or 4 years, maybe longer. I've been on the board of Tudor Place in Georgetown in the 90s, and then again, I just rotated off a year, 2 years ago, I think. But they have incredible archives at Tudor Place, because all those Martha Custis Peter and her successors kept every squib of paper and receipt and everything. They have a huge archive. And one of the things that, I remember the first time I read Mistress of Riversdale, thinking about Rosalie, Eugenia, in her carriage going to see her husband's cousins at Tudor Place. And sort of thinking, it sounded to me like something that would have been a day-long trip. And it was taking her about the time it took me when the Suitland Parkway was being rebuilt. And it took sometimes 2 hours to get into Washington. And I was thinking of the carriage and the horses just whizzing over to Tudor Place in Georgetown. But it seems to me that Riversdale, because of the family connections through Calvert, Custis, to Tudor Place, and also to Mount Vernon, the interrelationships, that there could be some fruitful ventures, either for lectures or combined research. And I think there might be, in numbers there is strength, and I think one might find, I've always wondered about, I asked the former archivist at Tudor Place if she ever came across any kind of records, because remember, Eliza Law was coming out to Riversdale to stay, and she was the sister of Martha Peter at Tudor Place. So the interrelationship of these, it's one big family group, and the enslaved peoples in each place that are preparing carriages to go to Washington or to Georgetown or back or out to Riversdale are part of this story, transportation back and forth. So there's a kind of huge combined familial story with all of these 3 houses. And that also included is the now sort of asleep Mount Airy here in Upper Marlboro, which is owned by the state of Maryland. And it is the restaurant that was run there, catering company, is gone, and it's just sitting there languishing. But that was George Calvert's ancestral home. So it just seems
Lynn,
to me there's.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And Ann Losh just pointed out that Christy Gross did do a joint lecture between Tudor Place and Riversdale a few months ago. And I know, Jen, you've been in touch with some of their, I guess, their staff more than their volunteers, but you're absolutely right, Lynn. The more we investigate, the more we can do more work together. And I think Tudor Place is a great place for us to start. It really is.
Well, and they have a new curator, Robert DeHart, and he's not from this area, and he's very enthusiastic. And I think, Jen, he would love to think about these things because he's learning too. So
yeah,
I think I should give him a copy of Mistress of Riversdale.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Anyway, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Jen, thank you very much for, as we talk about frequently with Ancestry, going down the rabbit hole. You just don't know when to stop, and because you're always something else out there to find and connect the dots in. It really can be very exciting. The question I have, do you have any further information? We referenced several times there, the Freeman's Bank. Do we know anything further about Freeman's Bank and either its operation or location, or just its aspect of banking in the Washington area?
I don't right now. I haven't really done any sort of research into that. I was focused on the Elias rabbit hole, but no, it definitely piqued my interest to learn, because I just have a very general background and knowledge of the Freedmen's Village and, overall. So, but now, yeah, I'm definitely more interested in it. So I will look into that and I will give an update.
The Irish deposited money.
Great. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate that. Just kind of a couple other things that I want to share with you is, I think was Howard mentioned earlier that Park and Planning, the actual Natural Historic and Resource Division, has been involved in developing a what they're referring to as the workshop on impact planning for the Prince George's County. And basically the structure of this, it is a facilitated group that's begun meeting. There are 4 sessions to introduce this to predominantly Park and Planning staff in the Historic Division, but they have included presidents or representatives from historical societies of the historic properties that Park and Planning operates in the county. So I've been asked to participate. I'm going on next Tuesday. It's going to be held at the College Park Airport Museum. It's a full-day seminar facilitated by Randy Korn. She is an individual that I've known for many years in my dealings and working for the American Association of Museums. And it is the object or focus of these few first group meetings is to develop how better the Park and Planning, and more specifically the Natural Historic Resource Division, can interact and understand the needs of its communities. And it's interesting to me that Riverdale Historical Society, along with the staff at Riversdale, over the past 10 months, I guess, have been involved in a map process from the American Alliance of Museums. They changed their name since I worked there. But it is an outreach to community and community interest. And about a month ago, we received the final report from the consultant that AAM brought out to us to share after his visit for 2 or 3 days there at Riversdale. And we will eventually share that with the membership for RHS, but at the planning, there's a lot of action steps that both Samantha, who headed the project for Park and Planning for Riversdale, and Maya and myself and Michelle and Ann were involved in it also, as was Jen and other staff members there at Riversdale, to see how better we can identify and interact and bring in the community to Riversdale, so that we're meeting the needs of the community and really defining the community of what Riversdale is serving. As many of you may know, the physical community of Riverdale Park has really expanded from the standpoint of the Hispanic community. And we've made some inroads at Riversdale of having bilingual signage and bilingual tour guides, printed tour guides, etc. But there's so much more of that we can do. And I think that the NHRD, Natural Historic Resource Division of Park and Planning, is again also trying to enter into that same needs of addressing the needs of the community. So at our next meeting, I hope to be able to report back to you the results of this meeting that I'll be participating in next Tuesday. And it is an ongoing process and project of Park and Planning that they continue this. The calendar for this is about a year that they hope for starting, which started about a month ago with these series of 4 meetings. And their target date is either the end of 2022 or early 23 to have a product that they can then introduce into better understand and address the needs of the changing community of Prince George's County from the aspect of the Historic Resources Division of Park and Planning. So I don't have a lot of information about it other than pre-reading that I've been assigned to do for the meeting. And it's a group of about 25 people that will be meeting Tuesday at College Park Airport Museum to to begin this process for us. So excited about it, to participate in it, and the fact that they have Park and Planning has seen fit to include, representatives of the Friends group from around the county. So we'll see what happens on Tuesday, and hopefully it'll be an open and enjoyable opportunity for all of us, and report back to you as we come down to that next meeting, which, by the way, if you want to pencil in, is May 14th at 11 a.m. Saturday, May 14th. You'll get a Zoom link for that, certainly. And I guess just to kind of do a little recap here for dates coming up, we do have the volunteer open house on April 30th, where we will hopefully recruit some new volunteers and get some interest going on there, and refamiliarize yourselves with the volunteers that are currently on the volunteer list, not only for docents, but Kitchen Guild, garden volunteers, and museum shop volunteers. We've taken the hiatus during COVID. I will have to admit that coming back to it, I was a little bit rusty the first tour, and really researched my notes a lot, and kind of learned some new things, or relearned some things, I guess, brought back to my memory. But I think others that have, God leave, you may want to have a comment on that also, of going back through some tours, that it comes back to you and rediscover some things that you haven't really thought about.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it took a tour or two to get back up to speed, but thanks to the retraining by Brenna early on, I felt it kept us more focused. Plus, having the latest copy of the new docent guide available is also helpful. It still is.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that. And I also, a rereading of Mistress certainly did kind of bring back some thoughts to me. And also Jen's work on the Descendant research is very, very helpful, of helping us to tell more of the story of the full families of Riverdale. So.
Patrick, do you mind? Oh, I'm sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
I was just going to interject about the museum shop. We're going to do some outreach to former museum shop volunteers and hopefully gain some new ones. We've had some changes regarding our credit card machine, and that was one of the reasons why we haven't reached out quite yet, because we were getting all of our ducks in a row. And I'll put together some new procedures, and if folks are interested, please reach out, or we'll be doing some outreach to folks if they're still interested in coming back.
Great, thank you very much. Howard, did you also have a comment, or?
I just want to let you know, Patrick, speaking of the community, I just got a note from Councilman Foe that they're having a little technical difficulties. So I don't know if they're going to be able to join us or not. It may take a few extra minutes, or I'm not sure, but we'll have to deal with that. You may want to just lead into talking about what's going on with the park in Riverdale Park.
Great. Why don't I go ahead and just do that, kind of a quick update on that, or maybe not quick, but Riverdale Park has renamed. I don't know whether you're familiar with, there's an area that has always been referred to as the Field of Dreams, which is up near the old Airco property. If you're familiar with Riverdale Park, where the new bridge overpass over the railroad tracks that leads back into the area where the Whole Foods is, there's a block of land there that was used as a soccer field for a while and a softball field. And through the neighborhood design group, the same group that we use to help us vision for Calvert Memorial Park, they also did a visioning process for that piece of land. And through that process and other input from the citizens of Riverdale Park, they've renamed that park the Plummer Park, after members of the Plummer family, to bring in the inclusiveness of what else the Calvert family and the Plummer family have brought to the town of Riverdale Park of the past 100 years or more. So there will be an official, I guess, ribbon cutting and dedication more towards the spring and summer, where the weather's a little more conducive to that type of thing. So when we hear a specific date on that, certainly we will extend invitations to all of the Historical Society members to be a part of that if your schedule permits, and kind of give some background of how the process came about to name the Plummer Park. And I think it's a great aspect to have more inclusion in telling more of the story of Riversdale and what we've added to the community over the years. So that's about what I have at this moment. And I'm sorry they're not able to join us, but maybe I can get them to do some kind of written article for the newsletter. We could kind of twist their arm to do that. So any other comments or questions I could offer or answer? Everybody's, I don't know whether so well informed or it's too early and not enough coffee yet this morning. So one of the two. But again, that's about all the updates that I really have for the society at this present time. I do appreciate all of your time this morning, being updated and what's going on at Riversdale. And now that tours are back open and the house is back open, it really feels like life is coming back into the house and the grounds. As I was out there Thursday to look at the mortar samples on the wall, kind of walking through the garden, and you can kind of see a little green peeking up through the grounds. It gives you a lot of anticipation and hope. And I often, as Lynn had mentioned about thinking about her rides into Washington of Rosalie and her carriage, I often think about probably Rosalie and George, maybe the children walking through the garden when things started to spring up a little bit, and the anticipation of summer and more family time and what have you being outside. I think that would be a great time to do. So if that's all we have, I thank you for your time and hope you go out and enjoy the rest of the day. Howard?
Anne and Michelle, if you can hold on a minute, we're going to drop off this Zoom call and I'll send you another link and we'll do a short executive committee, if you don't mind.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you very much. With that, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thanks for your time again.
All right.
See everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.